Hello everyone. A few days ago I shared a new video about some changes that I have been making to my potting soil. Today I want to give you some additional information about the old and the new ingredients so that you can think about making your own potting soil based on some of the experiences I have with these ingredients. I started making my own potting soil a couple years ago. I am a huge fan of Gardener's World. This is a British gardening show. If you don't know the show and you watch my channel, guys, you gotta go check it out. You can catch old episodes on YouTube, but you can also get a subscription to BritBox and see the last few seasons there as well. And in the UK, they are very serious about going peat free. In watching Gardener's World, it really did spark my interest in making my own homemade peat free potting soil. Peat moss is not a renewable resource. Now, some people will argue that it is, but just know this one quick fact is that it takes 1,000 years to create 1 meter of peat moss. So to me, I don't consider that necessarily a renewable resource. There are many other reasons that you may want to consider not using peat moss, and I'll let you go ahead and Google that. It'll all pop up real quick for you. I do want to link below to a video done by, I think her name's Erin Anderson from Gardener's World. It was either a year or two ago. She did some segments about the whole peat problem and going peat free and about that beautiful ecosystem. So I'm going to try and link below, and I would love it if you guys would take a look at that video. And now I'll get to the new ingredients I am trying out in my new peat-free homemade potting soil. And the first is going to be PittMoss, and it's PittMoss's Prime Soil Conditioner. I am trying PittMoss as a replacement for coconut coir, which coconut coir was actually a replacement for peat moss at one point. Anyway, PittMoss in the soil conditioner is recycled paper products, basically paper products that are headed off to the landfill. PittMoss comes in and processes them in a way that can replace peat moss. It can add soil retention qualities. It can add that lightness to the soil that peat moss or coconut coir would also do. One of the great things about PittMoss is that it is 100% made in the USA and specifically in Pennsylvania, which is very close to me. Definitely go ahead and check out PittMoss's website, and if you are interested, I bought the 2 cubic feet bag of PittMoss. There is a coupon on their website. I think it's Grow, and you can get 10% off. The next ingredient that I am trying to incorporate into my soil is parboiled rice hulls. The parboiled rice hulls are what is going to hopefully replace the perlite and the coarse vermiculite that I was previously using. Rice hulls are the chaff or the outer coating of the rice kernel, and that is collected and discarded when rice is produced. And so what happens is that product is taken and then it is parboiled at a high temperature, and that boiling process makes sure that the product is disease-free and pest-free. So like perlite, rice hulls are going to loosen the soil, allow oxygen into the soil, allow it to be a little bit more free draining, and hold on to a little bit of moisture. Rice hulls break down into phosphorus and silica. And if you're familiar with fertilizers, phosphorus is the P in NPK. So that's going to add nutrition to the soil. So I also said that it breaks into silica and adds that to the soil as well. And what silica does is it strengthens the cells of plants, and it also hardens the epidermal layer of plant cells. And so by improving the structure of plant cells, they are more resistant to drought, more resistant to frost, and also more resistant to disease. So having silica in your soil is definitely a good thing as far as the rice hulls breaking down. A couple side notes that I want to make about rice hulls. I read that using rice hulls as a little bit of a mulch can deter fungus gnats, and because fungus gnats can't get through that layer of rice hulls. And I have every year a pretty annoying problem with fungus gnats in my seedling room. So I'm definitely going to give this a try. My only concern in using the rice hulls to deter fungus gnats for my seed starting process is that they prevent the seeds from coming up and emerging. I don't have that concern so much with maybe something like cucumbers, pumpkins, tomatoes, things that are really strong, but some of those more sensitive seedlings, I'm going to keep an eye on and see if this is a feasible tool to use to deter fungus gnats for some of those plants. Also, earthworms eat rice hulls, and not only are rice hulls renewable, they are also biodegradable, and they are also eaten by the earthworms. So we all want to feed the earthworms, right? So that's definitely a good thing, adding more goodness back to your soil, having the earthworms eat those hulls. And I really like this aspect of using rice hulls and it being biodegradable versus something like perlite that is not biodegradable. So now we're on to the compost, and compost adds nutrients, beneficial microbes, and fungus all in one shot to your potting mix. So compost is definitely an essential ingredient in my potting soil mix. I am using a homemade compost in my potting soil now. And the reason why I am doing that is simply because I have been composting, but my system hasn't been efficient. I did a video, and I will put a card up about that, showing how I fixed the system. Not really like a step-by-step, more like a vlog, but I did fix the system that I had, and I actually ended up with a lot of compost. And so really happy to use that as opposed to buying a product in plastic bags and bringing that home. Now, if I didn't have any homemade compost, I would definitely use the leaf grow compost. So this is the time where I'm going to ask you a favor, and I would love it if you would consider following me. And to do that, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell button to be notified when I release new videos. And if this content appeals to you, please give me a like. You saw me make up my new soil the other day, so it is ready to use. Now, what do I think of it? It is a little chunkier than my other mix, and I am not going to attribute that to any of the new materials I used. I'm going to attribute that to maybe ratios that I was using, or the fact that I'm using homemade compost, which isn't sifted. So I really like the way it looks, and I will be using both mixes to grow my natives and to grow my vegetables, and I'll keep a close eye and see if there's any differences in the germination rates or success of the plants. I don't make a separate seed starting mix. I use one potting soil for my seed starting of my vegetables and for my natives. And the reason why I do this is because natives are going to stay in their pots a lot longer than your annual vegetables are. In that they are staying in their pots a lot longer, they're going to need nutrition versus an annual vegetable that gets its first leaves and then you transplant it. And I made that mistake. I think it was the first year I was growing native plants from seed, and some of them, and it was just in a couple of the flats, they sprouted and they were growing, they were getting their leaves, and then they started turning purple. And that is definitely a sign of nutrient deficiency. So from that point forward, I have always used a compost in my potting mix. And then the other thing about that is that I don't want to have to make two mixes. I don't want to make a seed starting mix and a potting mix or a potting soil. So I'm going with the potting soil and sticking with it. I saved discussing some of the old ingredients in my potting soil until here at the end, just in case you all weren't interested in hearing about those ingredients. So first up, let's talk about coconut coir. I actually really love coconut coir as a product, as an ingredient in my potting soil. It's real fluffy, it's easy to use, but there are some things about coconut coir that don't make it as environmentally friendly as, say, the PittMoss. So first off, there is some chemicals used in processing the coconut coir into the way we receive it and use it. I believe there's also a concern with the process needing a lot of water, and then that water polluting natural water sources. And also, and probably one of the things that hit me the most is that I was receiving these bricks of coconut coir from Amazon in these thick plastic bags, opening it up, and the packaging says that from places all over the world. And that's actually when I started thinking about if I could be more environmentally friendly with the potting mix or the potting soil that I am creating. I will say though that it is my opinion that using coconut coir is a lot better than using peat moss. So if you have to choose one or the other, I would suggest going with the coconut coir. Next up is perlite. Perlite was one equal component in my previous recipe, and perlite adds drainage to the soil, adds some structure and oxygen to the soil, and also retains a little bit of moisture. Perlite is a non-renewable resource. Now, there isn't any concern of having a shortage of perlite, but it is non-renewable. And perlite is volcanic glass or obsidian that's mined from the earth. It's crushed up and then it's heated to super high heats. When that happens, that crushed volcanic glass pops into the perlite balls that you use in gardening. Based on what I read, the impact to the environment is minimal, and there are no byproducts in the creation of perlite. However, I will say that the fact that it's non-renewable and that it is a mined resource, that is why I am choosing to find an alternative, and that alternative is in the rice hulls. Oh, and the one other thing about perlite I just happened to think is you always need to wear a mask when using perlite. There is some concern about long-term exposure to perlite dust. Now, I was using it for quite a bit of time and not wearing a mask, and I would always start coughing. It would bother me. At some point I was like, it was probably after COVID when we had all the masks around, I was like, I gotta start wearing a mask when I use this stuff. I did. That definitely helped by using the mask, but I don't want to use it long term because of the health concerns of long-term exposure to perlite dust. And now I'm going to take a moment to talk about coarse vermiculite. This is a natural mineral, and I use this very similarly to perlite, and I also have loved using it as a cover for seeds that need light to germinate but still need to be covered. Usually seeds that need light to germinate are very, very small, and so if you could cover them with coarse vermiculite, the sun could still get in. So I was using coarse vermiculite for two reasons. A difference between a perlite and a vermiculite is that while perlite is non-biodegradable, vermiculite is biodegradable, but it takes a very long time for vermiculite to biodegrade. So for the same reasons that I am trying to discontinue and very much limit my use of perlite, those are the same exact reasons for discontinuing and limiting my use of vermiculite. I am going to try to completely replace those two products with rice hulls. Now, to sum it all up, my previous potting soil recipe was not horrible, but I wanted to explore if I could do better. If I could do better for the environment in this little piece of land that I have here in Northern Virginia, because I do so much gardening. And I have a YouTube channel about gardening. So I want to do the best I can for the environment. So that is the reason why I am trying these new materials. I'm really excited to see how they turn out and how they perform, and I will keep you updated in my videos. So that is it for today. Thank you so much for joining me here. Happy gardening, and I will catch you again next time.